Hi, welcome to Thrive's Lunch and Learn on eTakeoff. This session is designed for new users, and also we want to illustrate some of the new features to existing users. Let's jump into the product. So this is eTakeoff Dimensioned. It's a tool for getting quantities from PDFs. And the quantities that we're primarily interested in are lengths, counts, and areas. This is, as I said, a 2D product. There are other products that in our offerings for 3D takeoff, but that's subject to a different day. Now, this product you can access readily in a trial format. So you can access it as a trial from the eTakeoff website. You can also get more information from Thrive's website on that. What I want to show you initially is some of the basic functions to give our construction customers an overview of the capabilities. And then I want to move on to some new powerful features that some of our existing customers might be interested in. So we've loaded up a PDF of a home construction here. And imagine that I am a plastering contractor and wanting to measure up the components of work required to carry it out. So it can be used by all sorts of different types of construction companies. In this case, I'm just measuring the plastering work, and you would customize your system for that. So just a bit of a walk around what we can see on the outside of the screen. We've got these control panels, and these can be, there's a number to select from. I've just got the most important ones turned on. And some of the things we can have is a control panel of layers. So when we have lots of things displayed on the screen, we might want to remove some. So if we associate some of the things displayed with a layer, we can turn on and off those layers. We've got potentially multiple PDFs associated with a job or multiple pages. So in this case, here's all the drawing pages that I have associated with this job. And the ones that are highlighted are the ones that have measurements on them. So if I just drill down onto one of the other drawings, we can bring those up. I go back to the one I was showing, that displays all the measurements that have been taken on that drawing. And the measurements that we've seen here, so the highlight, the things that are colored in, they are traces. So these are things that we set up a library of traces, things we might want to measure, and ultimately these might be measured for estimating or production quantities. So I've measured a number of items. I've got a number of traces here. So a one-sided wall, two-sided wall, areas, and door counts, and so on. And then once you have your library, you can perform your measurements. And the measurements that I've completed so far are illustrated over here. So if I click on this two-sided wall, here's all the two-sided walls that I've measured. And it shows that I've got 43 different points, a total length of 61 meters, perimeter perhaps not that relevant, area not that relevant here. So that's just an illustration of some of the control panel information that we have around the side. Now I'll go through some basic measurements. So I'll start off with a project that I haven't measured before. Okay, so here's the same drawing on a different project. And I want to measure a simple thing to start with. So I'll measure a length. So these different traces have been set up. They might be a length, or they might be an area, or they might be a count. So I'll start off with a length. And I'm just going to start off with the basic functionality initially, and then we'll see how the product has evolved and some of the new functionality that's been brought in just recently. So one-sided wall, you see there's a measuring icon, and I just click on the points where I want to measure. And press enter when I'm finished, and that gives me a total length. I can go back and add in something if I've missed later. But we see that what I've measured so far is 47 meters. And that's sort of one measurement. Another length measurement might be two-sided walls. So I might want to measure from there to there to there. And I can have separate measurements by pressing the N key. Or if I want to add all these together, I can do that using the G key. If I make a mistake, I just undo. And so on. So we see for each of the different measurements, they're displayed there. And then we have a total of all of that trace. Using an area. So I just click on the points that I want to be included in the area. Here's another one. Might want to measure the area inside the house. And lastly, another type of measurement that we got is a count. So we just see something on the drawing and we want a total count of that number of things. So let's say the doors. Just click everywhere there's a door, and then it'll give me a total count of those doors. There's one there too. And that gives me 17 doors. And that's the different types of counts that I've got. And it gives me some initial measurements, which if I'm estimating, I might want to extrapolate from that. So I measured the wall, but I might want to, if I had the height, that would give me the area and so on. And also then in our estimating system, we might want to work out all the different component materials that are used in the construction of that wall. Okay, so that's the basic of the measurements that we've done. The system has moved on, so we see perhaps that some of the things that I've done there are not perfect. They're slightly skew-if. So we've got the latest technology is the snap. So that will, I'll illustrate that now. That will allow us, if I select all these items and just delete them, and I can do them again. Turn on the Snap AI. Take a measurement. So you see my cursor now has a circle around it. So it is looking for components of that drawing. So we have different types of things that it can be looking for. If it can be looking for points, it can be looking for segments, or it can be looking for polylines. And as we move over an object, we see that the cursor changes. So if we're looking for points, if we hit a line segment, it becomes more filled in. And if we move across to a point, it becomes solid. And you see whether it's snapped to that point, so it recognizes that point in the drawing. Now this occurs on vector PDF. So the vector has the built-in intelligence. It has all the formulas that are in the original draftsperson's use of the software. The other type of PDF is a raster PDF, which is just an image and doesn't have that intelligence built in. You can tell pretty easily if it's a vector or raster by just zooming in, and if it maintains the clarity, integrity, then you know it's a vector. Also, if the Snap AI is not highlighted. That could indicate that it is not a vector drawing. And I'll just illustrate how we might use that. So again, if we're measuring one-sided walls, we can go to a point, and it just snaps to all the points that it finds. There may be multiple points to find, but it just makes it easier, makes it more accurate, makes it quicker, that whole process, and you end up with a nicer takeoff. And the same with two-sided walls. Yeah, you can still see here, I missed the point that I was particularly looking for. You can just undo and go back. So it's forgiving in that respect. So that is the snap for points. We've also got snap for line segments. So if I turn that on, and you can just click on the buttons, or you can use the arrow keys to choose between the different modes, and you can just turn it off completely as well if it's not something you like. So let me see if I remove that information and do that again with segments. So this time, if it gets close to a line segment rather than a point, it selects the whole segment, and it will, based upon whether you move to the left or move to the right, it will select the next point that you might be interested in measuring. So then it will find the whole segment and the whole segment again. We can carry on measuring over here. So there may be a lot of different line segments. And so on. It takes a bit of practice to get the most out of that one. I prefer the points rather than the segments. It will depend on the nature of the drawings that you're measuring, which is best, but you can just choose which you prefer using those two different methods. And the last method is, for the Snap AI, is the polyline. So polyline is a line that is completely enclosed. So if I find in another example, in the La Quinta Hotel, there's a nice image in there. Oh, here's one I've done already. So if I just turn off the AI momentarily, and say we wanted to measure the outside of that pool, we could use a series of straight lines, and then picks points along the curve. We get a pretty good version of that, but it's time consuming. So this is where the benefit of the Polyline AI comes in. So you can see I can do it without the AI. But if I choose to use it, and let's say I'll choose an area this time, and the polyline. Okay, one of the things about measuring in eTakeoff is that if we want to measure positive quantities, we measure clockwise, and if we want to measure negative quantities, we measure anti-clockwise. So that's, if I move at that side, you see all that hatching. That's for if we wanted a negative quantity. Okay, so I wanted a positive quantity, and imagine if I just wanted to get the little area around the edge, so I can go and do that, and that just gives me the area of that particular side. And if I wanted to fill that in, maybe a different color, a different measurement, again, find the outside, and it puts in all the points for you. So polylines are perhaps not used very often in PDFs, but if you find them, it's a very quick way to measure them. Okay, and this Snap AI is available in version 7.04 of eTakeoff Dimension. It's just recently come out, long been in the preparation, and I think it will give users a lot of benefit in terms of the accuracy and speed of which they can do their takeoff. Remember that it only applies to vector PDFs, and it's only available in the Premier version of the software. So the software is licensed using Basic, Advanced, or Premier, and this AI is only available in the Premier. It's a more expensive one, but it will, I'm sure you'll get benefit from it over time. Before upgrading to this version, if you're an existing customer, consider the compatibility of Dimension Bridge, and if you're using the estimating product with that. So read those notes before upgrading. Okay, so that's a new feature that I wanted to illustrate to you. I think it's excellent. It's going to bring you a lot of benefit. Another new feature is the bridge takeoff. So looking at my Nicholson project with a completed takeoff, I want to use these quantities now to bring over to an estimating program to work out the cost of carrying out this work. So that's done using Bridge, which is a separate program. And I want to create a new bridge. I'm going to create a new estimate as well. So there's a couple of different ways that you can set up the bridge takeoff to send from dimension through to your estimating system. And this is one of the new ways. If you're an existing customer, you might be using a different method. This is very quick to set up. So we have all our estimating items and assemblies set up here. And this is a Sage estimating assembly. And the Sage estimating assembly has a series of what are called parameters. And based upon this sort of question and the answers that we fill in here, it will output all these items for this assembly. And that's going to give us perhaps all the different materials and components that are required to construct the works that we saw on that drawing. So we can, one of the parameters we can do is, or the variables that we can select is, for example, the type of board, the length of the board. But what we need here is, the next thing we need is the area. So we want the ceiling area, and we've measured that previously on the drawing. So I want to right click in there, get takeoff quantity, brings me to my measurement. So the ceiling area is here, and I right click, bring that quantity in, and I want to get my two-sided walls, bring those up, all those things, bring them through, and the one-sided walls. What height is my wall? I can type in that information. Standard one is 2.4, which I'm going to leave. Now with my plastering quantities, I might want to deduct some plaster for the doors and window openings in the walls. So I'll get those quantities as well. Got 17 doors. And I've measured the length of windows in there. Okay, so there's a number of other questions and answers in this assembly. I'm going to leave that with the standard settings. And so what I can do now is create a pass. So that's going to output all the items based upon some formulas that are associated with this assembly. And some of the items are selected and some unquantified, others are not, based upon the creation of this smart assembly. And then I'm going to send this to the estimate. So the estimate will contain all the costing information associated with that. Let's go and have a look at that estimate. All right, so here's that estimate with all the items that were measured in that dimension takeoff. And we see here we've got a number of positive quantities and some negative quantities. So perhaps the area of all the boards, and then a deduction for the boards of the doors, deduction for the window length, and we've got the ceiling boards, and so on, labor components. I'm not going to go into the details of estimating. I just wanted to illustrate the way we can send the quantities from dimension over to the estimate. And we see these quantities here. If we wanted to backtrack and see where did that come from, we can drill down. So there's drill down to eTakeoff bridge. So it brings us back to the bridge to see where those quantities came from. And then from there, we can drill down again back to the drawing. So it'll highlight the area where that information came from. So you've got that nice audit trail between the drawing, the traces that you've colored in, and the estimate, which will have all those quantities brought across and costed up. Okay, so that is bridge takeoff. That is one of the methods to send information from your dimension through to estimating. There are other methods of doing it, but it's relatively new. So as part of this Lunch and Learn, I wanted to introduce that method of doing it for some of our existing customers that might find that beneficial. All right, so that is the things that I wanted to show you in that Lunch and Learn. We'll now have a question and answer session for any further questions, and you can also just follow up with me personally if this product is, or some of the updates that we've done on the product are of interest to you. Okay, thanks very much for attending, and see you next time.